welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be talking about Critical Role Downfall and if it was good. Was it good? Was it bad? And, just going over general things about it, talking about the things that I liked, things I didn't like. This is kind of a review, and it's going to be more relaxed and laid back. So, spoilers, first and foremost. I do want to just put that out there. There's going to be spoilers, many spoilers for this conversation that we're going to be having, because I'm going to, like I said, go over things that I don't like, things that I did like, talk about the story a little bit, and at the end of the video I do want to talk about a few fan theories. I was going to make a couple of videos on like the fan theories from Downfall, but the next episode of Critical Role is coming out this Thursday, which doesn't give me a whole lot of time to do any of that. So realistically, gonna have to do it all today because I do want to talk about it all while it's still relevant. So yeah. So one last time before we get started, I do want to just say spoilers. Spoilers for Critical Role Downfall. Spoilers. Also, I might say a few names wrong. So, we're going to have to live with that. I've warned you now. There will be some incorrect names. Spoilers. So, was Critical Role Downfall any good, and was it worth watching? Short answer, yes. And if that's all you wanted to hear, see ya. But realistically, there's a lot more to talk about than just that. So, I'm going to go over the good and the bad from this mini series, and have a discussion. Let me know if you agree, if these things are bad or good or not to you. And yeah, so I'm gonna start with the bad because I just feel like there's less to talk about here, because overall I think it's really good. So starting off with the bad, obviously, is the first episode had like the whole, and like I said, this is gonna be more relaxed, so there might be a few ums and ahs, but the first episode had the whole like where the gods came from thing and had their origin story. And overall, I very much enjoyed this, origin story-esque thing. I very much liked the whole concept of them being like little floaty lights of possibility, and they're in an entire castle of possibility, of literally endless hallways and all this sort of stuff. A book that is constantly being written down, and because it is never ending, all this stuff was really good. However, it was marred by, and this is the only thing I didn't like about the origin story, it was marred by the fact that they had some stupid audio distortion thing over top of their names. I can't get over this. I've heard a couple of people explain in their theories as to why they did it is because we're not supposed to be able to comprehend their names. I would rather just hear their names. Personally, I would have rather just heard the names of the characters and moved on from there, because that was annoying, and I think many people also had issues with it. Now, apparently, the closed captions for these names were, helpful, but I didn't even think about closed captions while I was watching it. And then for the next, like, 2 episodes of Downfall, the closed captions weren't even working, like, on Beacon. So, I didn't have that option. So, frankly, that's a moot point in my opinion. It didn't matter, and I really just did find this whole thing to be distracting, and I had to rewind it a couple of times and be like, what are they even saying? And eventually I kind of picked up the names, and then I had to like look up what the names actually were, because I was under the impression they were one thing based on the distortion sounds, and then it was something else. So I found that irritating, but the rest of that whole opening sequence with the origin of the gods was great. So that thing that I disliked, that the whole origin story distortion sound thing, that was a very specific thing. Now I'm gonna cover like less specific stuff that I didn't like about Downfall. So the first thing, I've actually mentioned this in the past, how Brennan talks really fast. He talks super fast in certain moments and not so fast in other moments, but his descriptions are super fast, and he uses like not simple terms to describe things. So you don't get a clear image of what he's talking about for a while. You have to go back and listen to it a couple of times to sort of pick up his description. And I called out Abria for having long descriptions, so I have to call out his descriptions here because they're not simple. One of the things that makes Matt so good at like describing a scene to you and the other players is he's able to do it in simple terms. He's able to do it very quick, like not quickly. He's able to do it simply enough to where you're able to pick up what everyone is looking at. Whereas Brennan, I feel like I had to take a minute to really think about where they were a lot of the time. I had to be like, are they here? Is that what this looks like? A handful of times. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because, that's just my level of intelligence, I guess. Like, I don't have like the the lexicon that he does. So realistically, that's on me. But I do think that it is a mild problem that I sort of ran into while watching the entirety of Downfall, and I wasn't alone. Other people said the same thing. Like there was a couple of times where I even mentioned in like the recaps that I did that there were words that I was like, well, I'm too stupid for those, and other people made jokes about it and like sort of agreed. So I didn't like that fact that there was a couple of descriptions. It happened a handful of times per episode where I was like, "What the hell am I even supposed to be looking at here?" Because of that, and you have to. A part of D&D is like imagining what's happening. You have to visualize it for yourself. So when a word isn't simple and you're trying to figure out what the heck it means, you're gonna miss other stuff, which caused me to rewind a lot. Thank God Beacon is a thing because you're able to rewind it because it's a VOD and not like watching the upload happen live. It's just the video, you have the entire thing in front of you. So luckily that was able to happen where I was able to rewind it. If you didn't have like Beacon and you were on YouTube or Twitch, I imagine you were screwed because you wouldn't have been able to rewind it and sort of do stuff like that. So that sucks if you were on like YouTube or Twitch. But this is just a mild issue that I had. It happened a handful of times throughout the entirety of Beacon where his descriptions were really quick and used some really big words. So yeah, make fun of me all you want in the comments. I already make fun of myself for it. So yeah. But anyway, big words, fast talking, made for a mildly painful combination occasionally throughout Downfall. And the next thing I'm not a terribly big fan of that happened throughout Downfall was there was a handful of like coincidences that happened. And I mean like that felt very convenient sort of thing. Like I said that during the watching the live stream. I was like that felt way too convenient for it to have happened. So the first time that this happened was, to me at least, when Salaha and Amira went into like Salaha's bar and they just so happened to be in the same location that one of the Celestials they're looking for is in. I feel like that seemed a little too convenient that the person they're looking for specifically, or one of them, is in a place that's supposed to be hidden away because it's supposed to be a place of worship for Salaha, right? So it's supposed to be hidden away. So why is this god or this celestial here? Why is this the one place that they elect to go? Why pick? It's supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be like a speakeasy type thing, or at least that was the vibe I got off of that. It wasn't supposed to be like too well known because there were demons taking off their shackles here. There were people messing like mortal beings, human fleshy beings having relations with Aortons, and I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure if there's any laws against that or not for the rest of it, but it seemed like it wasn't meant to happen, so I don't know. But realistically, it just felt like this place was supposed to be secret. So these people who just showed up, these celestials who just showed up, know where it is. And they're able to go there and it being like a little place to hide away. I feel like it would have made more sense if Umleta, Salaha, and Amira went to the speakeasy, learned from like the bartender where this angel's hiding, and then they actively sought that angel out. I feel like that would have made a little bit more sense and been a little bit less convenient. And then another, thing of convenience that I thought was a little odd was that the tunnel, like when the team break the engine went out there, and it was why am I spacing? It was the emissary and it was Asha who were like going to break the Obtenebrator engine, and the tunnel they got on, like the tunnel that was opening up from the roots, perfectly opened up to the exact thing they were looking for, and then the exact same sort of like thing happened, or the scribe that Salaha and Amira were looking for just so happened to be under that specific location. And it was initially described, or at least I picked up that it was initially described that there were multiple of these like engine things. So the fact that they found the exact one they were looking for seemed rather odd. Now there might not have been many of this type of engine, but the fact that they ended up going to that engine specifically, and the fact that the scribe was perfectly underneath that one, felt again coincidental. And then this isn't a coincidence or anything like this, but this to me was like the biggest bending of the rules that happened throughout Downfall, which was they were in, like during the second episode, they were in completely separate wards. All three groups of all three parties were in completely separate wards. And Amira sent her her familiar Dearest, the Raven, from her ward that she was in to another ward in a single turn, and then in that same turn sent the familiar down through the hole that the other team went through to the engine, and she was able to teleport through the eyes of Dearest. I feel like there should have been at least 2 or 3 turns in between that actually happening. So again, I don't, I don't mind stuff like this where the rules are bent a little bit, but that had to be thousands of feet, right? Like, a familiar can't move that fast, even if you're a god. Like, unless your familiar is like teleporting, I feel like to have just like avoided this, she should have just sent, like, they should have just said, "Oh, you sent Dearest with them, so you can have an eye on them." That would have just, I would have accepted that, that little change up in time, and they would have been like, "Okay, cool." But instead, they specifically described having Dearest meet up with a bird, fly up to a different ward, fly down the tunnel that took them a while to fly to walk down, and then teleport in the same turn. That felt odd to me, and it felt cheap. So again, not a coincidence, but like an instance of something feeling cheap. So my last issue about Downfall is that it wasn't 4 episodes. If it had a fourth episode and the last episode wasn't 6 hours long, like they could have had the first one was 4, the next one was 3.5 to 4, and then the third one, the last one, was 6.5 hours long. You could have had a third episode that was 3 hours long and then had a 4 hour episode for the last one, and it would have worked just as well. In fact, it would have been better because we would have been able to, pull out plot threads and make things seem a little bit more interesting. I feel like there should have been more moments where the whole Arcadia Milo thing, where, Milo wasn't real and Arcadia was, could have been played up more. Like, that was Arcadia was Milo in disguise thing, right? So they could have played that up more. Like, Brennan could have had a couple of moments where Arcadia slips and a thing comes in, and people start questioning if Arcadia is on the side of the Becerra gods or not, right? I feel like that could have happened a handful of times before the reveal of Arcadia being the one in the glass jar. So if they had extended that out, we would have had more time with Tristan Aiden, which I feel like they were the ones who got like the least screen time, which kind of sucked. I feel like I mentioned earlier, Salaha and Amira could have gone after the angel in a completely different location, which would have shown off more of the wards of Aor. And I just feel like more stuff could have been drawn out between like certain characters. Like, Asha and Zarhust had like a really interesting rapport, and yes, I'm sure it's written somewhere about the gods and like the history of Exandria and stuff like that, where they have this rapport between like the two real gods. But I would have liked to have seen them connect more as they were sort of traveling through this tunnel, going down to the Obtenebrator, right? Like, I would have liked to have seen more from them. Just, and I know it sounds weird, I'm asking for more when we had a 6 hour episode, but I feel like you could have done 3 hours here for episode 3, and then 4.5, 5 hours for episode 4, and the last episode was just a fight, which would have been really fun. Like, the lead up to the fight for a little bit, and then a fight, right? But instead, we didn't. There's a little bit of time that should have been there that isn't there, which kind of sucks. Things got sped up rather quickly, so they had to move forward. But with hindsight, I feel like we should have had an extra 3 hours to extend it. The reason Calamity was so much fun is because it had four like decently length episodes. They were able to build on the ideas that were being portrayed, whereas I don't think that time was given to Downfall, and I feel like it should have been. So I talked at length about things that I didn't like, but now I'm going to talk about things that I did like, and this is going to seem a little faster because I don't feel like I have to explain myself as much about things that I do like compared to things that I don't like. But I very much enjoyed the fact that now, whenever I think about the gods, there's more personality there. Beforehand, they were like floating heads, entities that had like, omnipotence, right? That's what a god is for the most part. Like, when you just think about them in like an auxiliary point of view, or like, oh, they're just doing their own thing, they're gods, they're off in the distance. But now, I'm always going to have these personalities from them. Their mortal forms have personalities. And I think that is one of the greatest takeaways from this, is there's more to the gods now. Even the betrayer gods have more to them than what they did before to me. Obviously, Asmodeus, or Asmodeus, however you want to say it, had a lot of personality, right? We knew about him from Calamity. He was the only god that like they truly interacted with in Calamity. So for him to get even more personality and to get even more vile from this whole thing, like, yeah, what he did to Xerxes was really bad, but what he did to Trist is way worse, in my opinion. And I despise him so much more now, and it makes me question if I'm even gonna like Breas. And I think that's a good thing. The fact that like this character exists and we are able to get more personality out of him is insane. The fact that Brennan was able to squeeze more personality out of these gods in these 3 episodes than we've ever had is wild. And then for the players to do such an excellent job of portraying their personalities as well. I didn't even know that the Wild Mother had this sort of vicious side to her, and then Asha was the way Asha was, and I was taken back by it. I was like, damn, the Wild Mother is kind of a bitch. And I very much enjoyed the fact that now, like, beforehand from campaign 2, I was like, oh, the Wild Mother's great. She's a very, helpful, serene, peaceful person. And now I know there's another side to her, which I think is so, so cool. And obviously, Amira's character is really fun for me. I very much enjoy seeing more about the Raven Queen being sort of connected to the other gods and like how she had to earn her place and their respect. I very much loved her story. Salaha questioning if they should even stop this. Salaha, to me, like, Corellin is a god that we've never, I don't think he's ever made any sort of like actual legit appearance. Maybe there's a handful of followers of Corellin throughout the entirety of Critical Role. I don't recall a single moment off the top of my head where like Matt Mercer ever uttered, yeah, you're in the Temple of Corellin. I don't think that's ever happened, right? We didn't necessarily have like all of these gods in our forefront of our minds until this point, and I very much like that they have these new personalities. Now, obviously, the Dawnfather, to me, we have had a few issues with the Dawnfather in the past. So seeing Aiden be like the character who's like, I want to do what's best, and I'm gonna stand behind my sister who's trying to make the other betrayer gods good people again, or trying to fix them or trying to help them, was good. But knowing that in the background he's willing to do whatever it takes to sort of protect himself, protect his followers, and be like, even just to move into a rural place and be like, we're taking this place over because we need more followers. Like, that's something that he did in campaign 3, right? That was the whole Isilra plotline where that group went into that town and they had to save them from the tyranny of the Dawnfathers, or the Dawnfather's followers. So I very much like that there's now 2 sides to every coin. We get to see new personality from these characters because of that. And the gods are no longer just omnipotent floating heads. They're now characters. And I think this is the best part of Downfall. I very much enjoy the fact that these gods are now characters. And I kind of want the Bell's Hells to save them because of this. Because of what they did in Downfall, I very much want them to be saved. Now, I also very much enjoyed the story of the entire thing, right? I love the concept of them moving into like mortal bodies, picking up mortal lives, and then, eventually knowing that their mission is to throw these mortal forms away to go destroy Aeor is great. And I like the fact that this was a very prolonged, pulled out plan. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're going to go steal a mortal's body for a week and then, do our thing. No, it was, we're going to turn into gods. Some of us are going to be 50 years old. Some of us are going to be 30. Some of us are going to be 15 years old. Some of us are going to be gods who have disappeared for decades. I love that concept. I think that's a sick idea that these gods figured out that at the beginning of the planning for the Factorum Malleus, they were like, okay, this is an issue. And then, 40, 50 X years later, they've now finally executed this plan where they're going to move in and try to sort of stop this thing from happening. I very much enjoyed that fact. I love that whole concept. I think it's badass. I think it's really cool. I also like how the Law Bearers, like, I have 2 things going on at the same time here, and if I try to cross these paths, neither are going to work. I very much enjoyed that. And again, it goes to show like more character for these gods now having more characters. I also liked how throughout the story that was being told, there were very clear signs of like the gods, the prime deities, wanting to not only stop this weapon from being made and sending out the plans to everybody, but they also wanted to protect Aeor. Some of them wanted, Aeor to, be allowed to do their own thing, to, Corellin specifically wanted them to be able to continue making things, not being destroyed. He thought the place was beautiful and amazing. It's why he picked to go there. He's like, this is a great place. I wanted to see it, and now I love it. Now I'm here, right? So we got to see, like, this whole situation with the gods of, do they think what they're doing is right? And that was the whole question of the entire campaign, of the entire, like, mini-series. Are they correct in destroying this weapon? And some of them believed, yes, they were correct in destroying the weapon. But at the same time, the prime deities wanted to protect this place and the people within. They didn't want to destroy them. They wanted to say, hey, you can't make these things. And we're going to wreck it for now. And we're going to leave you here. And we're going to come back and be like, hey, are we cool still? Like, we didn't kill you. You guys were worried about us killing you. You're not dead. You know, like that was what the gods wanted to do. That was what the prime deities wanted to do. The betrayer gods from the beginning made it very clear they wanted to just blow everything up. So I think the whole like question of what is Ludinus trying to show, and he's going to obviously twist it in some weird way. And that's the fun part about this story, is that he is looking at it from a twisted, respect-filled way of Aor. He respects Aor. So I was watching it through Ludinus's eyes, trying to figure out what he was trying to see. And I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see anything other than what we already know. The prime deities are good, and the betrayer gods are bad. So I'm very curious as to what he's going to say and what he's going to do. And I'm very excited for it. But overall, I very much love the story. I very much love the characters. The combat. Oh my god, that last combat was so much fun. And here's the thing. A lot of people say, like, D&D is more fun at, like, the mid-levels. Like, level 10 to, like, 14 is the most fun for D&D. Fuck that. I thought it was so much fun watching these level 20 characters just wreck shit. Like, seriously, Meteor Swarm is so cool. And I love the fact that, like, you know, the counterspell stuff sort of was happening. Very much enjoyed that. I liked seeing characters, like, as, like, the fight was going on. And this is the first time I've ever seen this, where a fight goes on and the player characters get stronger as it happens. Whereas normally, like, oh, we're losing spell slots, we're getting weaker as time goes on, we're losing hit points. All this sort of stuff is happening, and if you're fighting the wrong monsters, you could even lose your weapons as time goes on. This is the only fight I've ever seen where the characters get stronger as time goes on. And I very much thought that was a very cool like thing to happen. And that was the whole story. The whole story of these mortals shedding, or these gods shedding their godly forms, becoming mortals, and then shedding their mortal form and becoming gods again. It was this nice little circle that was happening. I very much enjoyed that this fight encapsulated that whole concept of destroying the things blocking their powers, and as time goes on, their mortal forms begin to like not being able to hold it. I loved all of it. I loved the idea that they were questioning what they were doing, and then at the end they decided, like, we have to do this. We have to destroy this thing because this character who was connected to Salaha sent out all the information. And it's because it's Salaha's fault. Because Salaha and Ioun didn't want to destroy it, now we know it wasn't Ioun, but because they didn't want to destroy it, they wanted to keep it for themselves, to be like, how did they come up with this thing, and sort of study it. Because of that, because of their greed to want to understand what happened and to not like let this information fall away, the information was sent out. And I very much like that the mistake they made cost them, and then had in effect cost Aor. And that might be what Ludinus is trying to show, but you know, I very much enjoyed that aspect of it all too. So overall, love the story, love the characters, love most of the concepts that were done, but there were a few hiccups, like I mentioned before, and you know, the bad section. But again, some of those are minor. Again, like one of them is a really big pet peeve of mine of not being able to understand character names, and then the other one was me not being smart enough to understand Brennan's whole, you know, descriptive nature. So that's my fault. Those two things are on me. The four episode thing, obviously, it's good without 4 episodes. It could have been better with 4 episodes. And then yeah, like I mentioned, there were a handful of plot conveniences, but that's fine. That happens. It's going to happen when you're kind of railroading a story, and it's just a thing that we have to encounter. So overall, I very much enjoyed this. Short answer, yes, I think that Critical Role Downfall is great. Long answer, Critical Role Downfall is great with a few issues. I guess it's not a long answer. It's a short answer, but longer than the previous one. Anyway, this whole video is the long answer to that. So now, I want to briefly talk about my favorite theory that is sort of circulating Downfall right now. And it all comes from Halis, the character who is the hospital-bound child who is saved at the end of the entire miniseries by Amira, or the Raven Queen, and is the child of Cassida, one of the engineers and scientists and mages who are working on the Factorum Malleus. So this character, Halis, he's a human boy who was sick and, is a part of Aor. Now, the two theories that are surrounding this character that I very much enjoy, the first one is that he is Ludinus Deleth. Now, some of you might be questioning this, like, well, Ludinus, he claims he saw the end of the calamity. Now, realistically, that is a problem. This whole thing that this child is born in the first, or not born, but, is in the first century of the calamity, and then Ludinus claims he saw the end of it. But here's the thing, and I know this is going to be like a mild mental jump, but that's what a theory is. I think this kid grows up to become a very powerful mage, if we want to call him, whatever. He keeps his name Hallis. And then towards the end of the calamity, after he's been like, you know what, I've had to deal with a bunch of fighting and a bunch of bullshit, he, somehow, some way, someone or himself casts, like, reincarnation on himself, and he becomes an elf. And his new form is born towards the end of the calamity. And he, in his new form, this elf form, sees the end of the calamity. And now, for the most part, he thinks about life through these eyes, through the eyes that he now currently has, of Ludinus Deleth. He can no longer be Hallis, he is now Ludinus Deleth. And I think that's a very interesting concept, and the idea that he sees the entirety of the thing, and then he understands like the sacrifice that happened in Aeor, and he respects it more because his mom died in Aeor, because everything that happened to Hallis in Aeor, and this would be a very strong reasoning for Ludinus to be the way he was, because yes, the gods healed me, they my mother wanted to help the gods, but they still destroyed my home, they still killed my mother, they still did all of these things. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that he could potentially have been Hallis. Now, again, that is a reach. I still like this reach. Sometimes people reach, but this is a reach that I like. The other theory that I think is way better and way cooler, in my opinion, is Hallis becomes Halas. For those of you who don't know who Halas is like the creator of the Happy Time Fun Ball. And I know that's not the actual name of this thing, but that's what I prefer calling it, because that's what the Bells or the Mighty Nine call it. So the idea that Hallis becomes a great mage named Halas, because he can't keep the same name because people will know he's from Aeor, right? So he doesn't keep the same name, but is vaguely familiar, and then he becomes Halas, who is the same race and who is a powerful mage who went missing, who went inside the ball and never came back out during the calamity. It's never stated when he went missing during the calamity, so he could spend, like Hallis could spend the next 70 years learning to become a powerful mage, or even less. Doesn't have to be that long. And he becomes a powerful mage, makes the ball, and then that's it. He's now stuck there. I think that's perfect. I think that's really cool. So I like both of these theories. I think I believe Hallis is Halas more than I believe Hallis is Ludinus, but I like both. So if either of them end up being true, that's cool to me. So there you have it. Do I think Critical Role Downfall was good? Absolutely. I think it was fantastic. I think it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I did have a few minor issues with it, obviously, but overall, I very much enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters, the story, the villains, everything that happened. I like it. And it fits super well with the canon of Critical Role, which is always the big problem you get when you sort of do stuff like this. But overall, I very much enjoyed it. Also, I love the fan theories that are coming out. I love just theorizing in general, but I'm loving a lot of the fan theories that are happening. So if you have a theory about Critical Role Downfall and certain stuff that happened within, please leave a comment below. I want to know more. I want to know what your comments are. Like, we didn't get an answer as to what the bubbles were. What are the bubbles in Aeor? We didn't get that answer. So I'm very excited to hear any fan theories that anyone has about that. So, yeah. I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 102, because yes, Critical Role is not taking a break this week because it is the first of the month. So that's cool. We get an episode this week. But anyway, I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 102 of Campaign 3 of Critical Role.